Alright you guys, welcome back into another One Piece prediction video. My name is Sai, and today we are here to drop 9 predictions for this upcoming chapter. Chapter 1173. So, before we get into it, I always do like to go through last week's predictions just to see how many we got right, how many we got wrong, and all that good stuff. So, jumping right into the mix, this was our prediction rap sheet for 1172. So taking a quick gander at this list right here, the purple are actually my predictions, while the red will be Zonins. Usually when there's a break week, I like to bring a guest on, and about 90% of the time, for at least these prediction videos, it is Zonin. So, getting right into Zonin's first prediction, it was very broad, but he said we would see the Sun Realm, and surprise, surprise, we did see the Sun Realm indeed. Next up, he said that Loki would actually sprout wings, which makes sense, given what we left off with last chapter, where Loki said, oh, I'll simply fly or jump up to the Sun Realm with Luffy. It's like, okay, how is he going to do that? Will he sprout wings? Will he actually just jump? We have no clue, but unfortunately, we did not get it this week. Next, he thought that Jinbei would put in work, and that's mainly because Jinbei is currently tied up, and he was like, oh, maybe Jinbei will break out of the chains. Maybe Jinbei will, stop Gonko, Sommers, or stop the Nightmare Monsters, or do something. But, of course, Jinbei is still incapacitated for the time being. So now, for Zonin's last prediction, he thought that we would see Emu in the chapter, and, of course, we did see that big bad villain. So, for my prediction, my first one right here is that Brook and Gonko would have some sort of interaction. Of course, I think this will still happen in the future, but last chapter we did not get it. Brook did take off though. Brook did leave after he realized something, according to Jinbei. Next, I thought that the Straw Hats could get reversied, but they did not. And the thing with this is that since they didn't get reversied, I think that does give us another hint that Reversi might not just work on the Straw Hats. It kind of goes back to that OG theory I'm sure you guys have heard of before, where you have to be in your homeland to get Doy Reversied. That is still on the board, and yeah, when it comes to the Straw Hats, I was like, oh, like they're incapacitated, they're binded by Gunko's arrows, they're covered in St. Sommers' thorn, why wouldn't you Doy Reversy them? Well, maybe Emu can not. So next up, I thought that we would get Ripley versus Sommers in the chapter. Didn't happen yet, but going through all these, I do think that most of these will just come true eventually. But in 1172, did not happen. I was not expecting, guys, a recap chapter. I wasn't expecting it. So this one, I said that we would not get Loki's Devil Fruit. That right there is Oda's specialty. Honestly, I might even put this on to 1173's bingo sheet because I'm just that confident. Like, dude, we're not going to get Loki's Devil Fruit anytime soon. So, next, I thought that Yarul would get stomped. That's simply because I thought we'd fast forward, we'd come up, time has passed, and by that time, Dory and Brogy would have already reached the village. But no, Yarul, in fact, looks really good in this chapter. He got a crazy amount of hype, not just because of his amazing speech, but because Hyruden called this dude the strongest person to ever be born 300 years ago that came from our waters. Of course, very specific, but still, Yarul got a lot of hype, man, so maybe I hop off of the Yarul hate train here. So, here we have it. 3 out of 9 are correct. And now it is time to go to our 1173 predictions, with the first one being, boom, 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 Yarul chops someone in half. I know, dude. Look at that. Oh, I put chips. Yeah, I'll change that. Chips, chops, not really the same thing, but you guys get the message. Yes, I do think that Yarul will look really good next chapter. I have completely changed tunes on this guy. At first, I was like, oh, he's lobotomized, he's old, what can he really do? He said he doesn't want to run, and that's great and all, but he's fighting Doy Reversy, Dory Brogy, and potentially even Emu if Emu is still nearby them. I did not think he would last, but because he's getting such crazy hype, because he's had so many great speeches, I've changed tunes, brother. I do think he will look good. So yes, I do think he could chop somebody in half. Whether it's Dory, Brogy, somebody, I think it'll happen. And this right here might sound insane, like, oh, he killed somebody? No. This is more or less inconsequential because Doy Reversy people do regenerate. So let's say he does cut Dory and Brogy in half. it doesn't really matter because they're just going to regenerate and then they'll be fine once they get undomified. Undomified, weird word. I'm sure that's not even correct. So next up, I think that we will finally see where Bonney is at. Bonney location revealed. This has to happen. You know, sooner or later, we will have to see where those missing characters are. And by missing, I mean Bonney, Lilith, and Frankie. They did not make an appearance in last week's map. Like, we got literally almost everybody except for Bonney, Lilith, and Frankie. I think that Bonney could be shown next chapter, and I think that she might actually be really significant here in Elbaph. You know, aside from Bonney going gear 5th, and that's like a huge counter to Emu, I think Bonney could realistically de-age Yarul. Bro, last chapter, we got the Yarul gas with, 300 years ago, he was powerful. Well, Bonney could theoretically age Yarul down to his prime fighting form. Hell, Bonney could do that for all the giants, really. Like, if there's other giants who are also very old, Bonney could put them in their prime fighting age. And the same could be said for the Straw Hats. I think that would just be a lot of fun. Like, oh, Luffy, let's make you 40 years old. Oh, dude, have you guys seen, like, the whole SBS where it's like, oh, here's the Straw Hats and their good timelines at this age? Dude, Bonney needs to do that. Imagine prime 40-year-old buff big Luffy, prime Zoro, prime middle-aged Sanji. Dude, that would be so much fun. Of course, you know, if you want to be a party pooper, you could argue, oh, but Sai, they're currently in their strongest forms. They're not going to get any more powerful in the future. Whatever, dude. You cannot deny that this wouldn't be super fire. Like, everybody, I think, unanimously would love an older, mature Luffy that is, like, 3 times stronger. That's just cool. That's just cool. So, enough fan fiction. On to the next one. I think that a God Knight... This is very specific, oddly enough. God Knight notices... Did I spell that right? Nope, I put 2 T's. Notices Zoro. So, I don't think that Dory and Brogy will be Zoro's main opponents in this arc. I think Zoro will deal with them next chapter. He'll set the stage, yada yada. But I do think, in the end, Zoro will go one-on-one against the Holy Knight. So, yes, I think we could see a hint at who Zoro's opponent is. Whether it's Sommers, Gunko, or Killingham, I think that one of them will be like, oh, who's that swordsman? Ooh, should I do something about that? Somebody will notice Zoro, especially if his plan is actually legit. You know, if Zoro does put in work, maybe a God Knight says, whoa, maybe I should deal with this guy. And then that is when Zoro can practice his advanced Conquerors Haki on him. All right, so for my 4th prediction, I think we will see the first real... Oh, shoot, let me just put that all in one line. First real hint at beating Doy Reversy. So, again, you could argue that, oh, you know, just do what Roger and Garp did. Beat them down with Conquerors Haki mass attacks. Yes, that is a solution, but I think there's another way to beat Doy Reversy other than what Garp and Roger did to Rocks. I think there will be some sort of play. Maybe you actually flip them. Maybe you get in between them. There's got to be something else. And I do think that maybe Zoro, Hyruden, and Yarul could start putting the pieces together here. I know I'm putting a lot of faith in them, but I think it'll happen. Does this mean that somebody's going to get undomified next chapter? Not necessarily. I just think that we'll get like a hint. You know, some theory is going to spawn out of next week's chapter that's like, hey, maybe this is how we do it. So now for my 5th prediction, that is right, brothers. I think it is time, but the Straw Hats will get freed. I will admit, I'm not super confident in this happening right away, mainly because I feel like a lot needs to go down. Like, Sanji has to get there, and then he also has to find a way to break through their bindings. Maybe Sanji can simply tear through them with his Haki. Maybe Sanji can set it on fire with Ifrit Janbei. But if that's not the case and you actually have to beat Gunko and or Sommers, then this has a low likelihood of happening. But either way, I would love for the Straw Hats that are currently bound to get freed, simply because I feel like they have a big role to play. Dude, the library is on fire, Jinbei! Come on, man! We need our firefighter back! We need to save Elbaph! And then, of course, much to the chagrin of many, this is still Usopp's arc. Usopp, last chapter, was super hyped up from Yarul's speech. He wanted to do something, but as Nami said last chapter, hey Usopp, we're still bound, dude. We can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. So yeah, hopefully this happens, but next chapter, I feel like this has the lowest likelihood out of all my previous predictions, but we'll see. So for my last prediction, because the last row is going to be from the comment section, so my last one is that we will not see Luffy or Loki. I always say it. Oda, the master of blue balls. I do not know what the hell happened to Luffy or Loki. Last chapter, Luffy and Loki, they were like, hey, we're going to beat this Draugr and we're going to go upstairs. Cool. Well, we didn't see them though. You know, that's the thing. We had everybody else, the new giant warrior pirates, Chopper, Sanji, Scopper, and Zoro. They rode the lift, elevator, mind you, from the bottom all the way up to the Sun Realm. No Luffy, Loki. And then Zoro, dude, go back to the map. Zoro and the gang were all the way back here. The giants in the village were over here. They made it all the way to the village. Still, no Luffy and Loki. Bro, where are they, man? You know what I mean? So I think Oda is playing around with them. I don't think he's going to bring them in right away. And this could just be because he wants everybody else to get a moment in the spotlight. Like Brook, for example. We're expecting a really good Brook and Gunko moment. So if Luffy and Loki do show up ASAP, that could just, you know, mar that situation. Like, oh, like Brook can't talk to them because Luffy and Loki's beating ass. So that is what I think is happening here. We're not going to see them anytime soon, but they will show up at the very end. And this is common for most arcs, right? Whenever there's like a big bad villain right in front of us, Luffy takes a while to get there. Oda likes to give everybody some time before the MC shows up. I mean, even back in Wano, we had the whole thing with the scabbards on the rooftop, the minks on the rooftop, and then boom, here's Luffy. You know, go back to Dressrosa. Oh, here's the Law fighting Doflamingo for a while, and then boom, here's Luffy. It is not surprising that Oda wants to save the best for last. And of course, because everybody's still speculating about Loki's devil fruit, it's like, yeah, he wants to keep the conversation going, in my opinion. So now onto the bottom row predictions. Like I said, these are all pulled from the comment section. One I saw that was kind of interesting said that Emu does nothing. And I wouldn't exactly like this, but it makes sense. You know, Emu is very much so just commanding the Doy Reversy army. I think it still might be too soon for Emu to actually hop into the battlefield themselves and just fight somebody. Like, imagine next chapter. Oh, Zoro's fighting Dory and Brogy. Does Emu step in? You know, would Emu actually start throwing hands with Zoro? What about Yarul? What about Sanji, who's going for the Straw Hats? I feel like Emu's just going to sit on the sidelines. This isn't saying that we're not going to get anything Emu related. I'm sure we'll get dialogue, but I don't think Emu's going to fight. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Emu does not fight. So, for the next one, I saw somebody say that Ripley and Gerd get rocked by Sommers. So, last chapter, I did put Ripley gets rocked. But here, it's a little bit different because they also put Gerd, so I'm cool with that. You know, we didn't know that Gerd was going to Sommers until now. And they're not necessarily going to Sommers specifically, but they're going to save the kids. And the kids are being protected by Sommers' thorns. He is the one shepherding the kids to the boat. So yeah, you know, seeing Ripley and Gerd get rocked by Sommers, I think would be sad, but great build-up for Sanji. You know, when it comes to women getting hurt, that is what Sanji hates the most. And we do know that Sommers has an affinity for beating women, so, you know, I almost feel like this is in the cards, sad to say. So now, for the final prediction, this one actually goes against what I said earlier, but someone said that Luffy and Loki go to heaven. I spelled heaven wrong. There we go. Oh, I still spelled it wrong. Okay. Heaven, yay! Yes, Luffy and Loki could go to the heaven realm. And what I've seen is that they would fly or jump too high in the sky, they overshoot, and boom, they land in the heaven realm, and we finally see what's going on there. And I think that would be a good way to occupy Luffy and Loki, because for me, I said we're not going to see them at all. And the thing with this is like, okay, if we don't see Luffy or Loki, what are they doing? I didn't really have a good answer to that, because I doubt they're still fighting the Draugr. The Draugr got frozen. So Luffy and Loki having a gag moment where they accidentally go to the heaven realm I think would be pretty dang fun. And of course, everybody is wondering what the hell is up in the Heaven Realm anyways. So I think this is the best way to stall Luffy and Loki, if that is what Oda's doing. So now, time to add some arbitrary numbers to these predictions on how likely I think they are to actually happen. First one, Yarul chops someone in half. I'm gonna give this a 70%. I think Yarul will fight next chapter, but I was oddly specific saying he'd chop someone in half, so yeah, you know, will that happen? Let's see, 70%. Bonney location reveal. This will happen eventually. Will it be next chapter? That's the big question. I'm going to say 75%. Yeah, I'll say 75% on that one. God Knight notices Zoro. I'm going to go high on this one. I'm going to give it 90%. Because we got to remember, technically, Emu would count for this, since they're in Gunko's body. Next, first real hint at beating Doy Reversy. I'm going to give that one a 100%. We've been dealing with Doy Reversy for quite some time. So it's like, yeah, like, give us that real hint. Let's see how it's actually beaten. So now, the Straw Hat's getting freed. I'm going to go low on this one. I'm going to give it like a 30%. Just because I feel like there'd be so much ground to cover. And I still don't know how Sanji would break the arrows. I guess if Scopper goes with them, Scopper could just cut it. But for Sanji, because his attacks are blunt, it's like, well, what does he do? Kick the arrows? Does he kick them? I don't know. Burning them, like I said, is an option. But it would end up just burning the Straw Hats, which I doubt he'd also want to do. So because I can't really envision this, I'm a low ball at a 30. Not seeing Luffy and Loki. Oh man, I really like the Heaven Realm idea. Shoot. Can I like go back and change this actually? No, I'll stick to my guns. Yeah, not seeing Luffy and Loki. Because I like the Heaven Realm idea so much, I almost want to lowball this one. But let's just give this 40%. Yeah, oh, that's kind of high. 20%. 20% not seeing Luffy or Loki. I really should have dialed that back and say that we're not going to see Luffy or Loki in the Sun Realm. I probably should have put that instead. So Emu doing nothing, I think is pretty high. I doubt Oda's going to have Emu on the front lines fighting. So let's give this 75%. Ripley and Garrett getting rocked by Sommers. Let's go higher on this one. I'll give that 50%. They have to get there eventually, man. And of course, Zoro did get to the village with Hyruden. So Garrett should not be too far off from Sommers. Luffy and Loki going to the Heaven Realm. Like I said, I like this idea a lot. I think this is a lot of fun. So I'm going to go at 45. I'm going to give that one 45. But yeah, there we have it, you guys. Those are our predictions for 1173. Let me know your predictions down below. And of course, spoilers should be out in a day or two. So stay tuned for that. I'll catch you guys later. Stay safe, brothers. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way until the end.